Clock hour. My name is Christopher Jones, welcoming you to another edition of Lunch Break on the APNU AFC page. Over the weekend past, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Joseph Harmon, led a delegation of members of parliament across Region 10. Various reports emanating from those areas were gathered. And of course, the various members of parliament have been presenting those information that they have received to the relevant agencies for actions to be taken. A leader of the opposition, Joseph Harmon, spoke with Village Voice and expressed to them his concern based on the reports emanating from the mining town of Linden. And of course, on today's program, a little bit later, we will have a leader of the opposition, Joseph Harmon's response to Bharat Jagdeo's rant, which was had yesterday. Of course, you know, Bharat Jagdeo, for a period gone by, used the media for 1 hour and 45 minutes, respectively, rants and rave. Opposition leader Joseph Harmon responds to him, and we will bring you that before the conclusion of the program. And of course, I will have a guest with me who will be sharing in for the discourse. The budget presentation will be had on Friday coming, and that will be determined in terms of what provisions are there, if any, for the public servants to bring relief to the average Guyanese citizens, or whether or not it's just another largest budget ever, but means absolutely nothing to the working people of Guyana. Here is that interview with Joseph Harmon and the Village Voice.
I believe that the idea is that we must provide information to all of the people of Guyana. And what we have been noticing recently is that the state media in particular, the media which is supported by budgetary allocations by the people of this country, that they have been blocking out our information. If you look at their news, if you look at all of their programs, it's as if the opposition views are never heard. And we represent in the parliament presently, in terms of the numbers that are allocated to us from the recount, 217,926 persons. And so you cannot shut out those views from the public space. And this is what has been happening. So that sometimes I go into different communities and people say, well, we're not hearing from the opposition. What is the opposition doing? What is the opposition saying? This is primarily because the major platforms for the distribution of information on a national basis, those major platforms are either controlled by the PPP regime or are sympathetic to them. So that we have a challenge now of getting information out to the people. And I want to thank Village Voice for the work that they're doing. The fact that you are now able to help us to distribute, to get information out to the people. And not just information, but information that is truthful, information that is credible. Because we have a lot of fake news that spread on these various media. And so we have to fight all of that. And so the way we is really to go directly to the public and take our views to the public. In the case of the National Assembly, we have important motions and questions that have been asked and that are to be answered by ministers in that forum, and yet some of it's being
Welcome back. Our apologies. Our technician have indicated that they're having some technical problems, and of course, we'll try to bring back that footage with Mr. Joseph Harmon addressing the outreach exercise that was had by the APNU AFC in the mining town of Linden. My guest at lunch break today would be Mr. Ganesh Maipal. I don't know if he's already in the chat room, and we will bring him to start the discourse as it relates to a matter concerning him. Of recently, he had to appear before a public service tribunal to answer questions related to him on the job. All right. I don't know if the operators indicate if Mr. Maipal is available to join us now. All right. So meanwhile, as we await Mr. Maipal to join the feed, let me just follow up with you quickly. So I mentioned to you that over the weekend, leader of the opposition, Joseph Harmon, led a delegation to the mining town of Linden. To be precise, there were approximately 11 areas in which was covered by the coalition members of parliament. Several persons went as far as Kokwani, Aichuni, Komaka mines, and various parts of Linden proper. And of course, we had the opportunity to hear directly from the residents on the ground some of their concerns there, and of course, with an opportunity to have those matters addressed for them. Ever since that outreach exercise, there have been a flurry of activities from the People's Progressive Party Civic, more particularly Bar Jagdeo. Just yesterday, after weeks of not seeing or hearing from him, appeared and went on a rampage, of course, which is a normal rant and raving. Today, leader of the opposition, Joseph Harmon, responded to some of the comments or sentiments expressed by Bharat Jagdeo. And of course, before the conclusion of the program, we will bring it to you. But amongst other things, Bharat Jagdeo was on record yesterday stating that the opposition is stoking racial disharmony in the country. Now, I did mention to you several times before that this is exactly what the People's Progressive Party Civic is known for. And particularly Bharat Jagdeo, some would call him a master at propaganda, is exactly what they are doing. They are now trying to foist on the coalition as having responsibility for same. But the records will show, and the records will always show, that Bharat Jagdeo, throughout his history and his political activism in this country, has been stoking racial disharmony across this country. I take you back to several elections in which he went to places like Luzignan, Better Hope, and more, and just to name a few. And right there, and then he would say to his supporters that you have to ensure, and amongst other words, he ensure that you keep the black man out of government, because when they get in, they will kick down your doors. You all recall that. You all recall that. They will kick down the doors. They will rape your daughters, all kind of story. And that is what Bharat Jagdeo is known for. Now, in this new dispensation, we've seen within, well, not even within the 6 months, but within a few weeks of being there, you saw the largest number of persons who are being terminated from their places of employment, the largest number of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent. That cannot be disputed. To date, when 6 months in, we have a total now. The numbers have actually risen. The last time I spoke with you, I think like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the numbers at that time stood at 1,372 persons who have been terminated to date. As we stand now, those numbers are now 1,542 persons. And of course, that is the addition of the staffers from the Ambligans Brigade in Region 10, the data management staffers between Linden and Georgetown, I think 69 to be exact. I can't remember the other unit in which persons were terminated. And of course, you just had recently the staffers at the Public Service College. So the number now stands at 1,542 persons who have since been terminated from their places of employment within the last 6 months. And of course, as I mentioned before, 96% of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent. The APNU AFC opposition parliamentary team have been compiling the list of names of persons from the various agencies that they have been terminated from since they jumped street. And as I said to you now, is that the numbers now stands at 1,542 persons having been terminated since March the 2nd, 96% of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent. We've also seen across this country that persons of African descent are being dragged before the court on some I can't say mysterious, but some trumped up charges. And of course, we did mention to you the fact when you look at the manner in which the DPP, the Department of Public Prosecution, have been executing their function. And of course, we put those images of persons who are currently being prosecuted and those images of those persons who charges were dropped. And we ask you if you spot the difference. And just as a reminder, I'll take the opportunity just to remind you of those now. The Department of Public Prosecution have since dropped charges that were on Irfan Ali, 19 fraud charges, Ashley Singh, Brassington, the chairman of the Ghana Elections Commission, Claudette Singh, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I call all of them? All right. So Anil Nandalal. So charges from the Department of Public Prosecution as it relates to persons like Anil Nandalal has been dropped. The charges before Ashni Singh has been dropped. The charges before Brassington has been dropped. The charges before Irfan Ali have been dropped. The charges before Claudette Singh have been dropped. Meanwhile, the same Department of Public Prosecution is currently conducting, on, amongst other persons, Mr. Lowenfield from the Ghana Elections Commission, Ms. Myers from the Ghana Elections Commission, Mr. Mingo from the Elections Commission. I don't have the names of the other persons from the Elections Commission. Valda Lawrence, Carol Joseph, James Bond, Christopher Jones. You have Young London from NISL, and the list goes on. All of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent in which the Department of Public Prosecution is currently prosecuting. And as I mentioned before, those Guyanese of East Indian descent, the Department of Public Prosecution have since dropped all of those charges against those persons. Bharat Jagdeo yesterday, in his usual rant, referred to the coalition as stokes in racial disunity in the country. Seriously? But this is what he's good at. And many times we at times get caught up with in his propaganda. You know, the old saying is that if someone says something repeatedly over and over and over and over, it then becomes the truth. So that is exactly what he's attempting to do. But the records will show very clearly. And unless you are less intelligent and you cannot read between the lines, you too will get caught up with Bharat Jagdeo and his nonsense. So that continues to be had. I want to bring in now Ganesh Maipal, who just recently had his own, or still currently is one of those persons who are being victimized by the administration. So if you're a Guyanese of African descent, you'll be victimized. If you are a Guyanese of East Indian or indigenous descent, and you happen to be a supporter of the APNU AFC, you're being victimized. I can bring to you a number of contractors across this country that since the People's Progressive Party Civic came into office, they were told point blank in their face that you will never get another contract again under the PPP. Why? Because it is alleged that they're supporters of the coalition. My guest, Ganesh Maipal, is in the house, and the operator is going to have that his image placed somewhere alongside so we could begin the discourse. Ganesh, are you there?
Hi, Chris. I'm here. How are you doing?
All right, not bad at all. I think you're okay. It's fine. Great. All
yeah,
right.
It's lunch break, so I just had my lovely country food in Wakenham here, dal and rice with callaloo and fry fish.
you gotta take me there one day so we can have lunch break on the island of Wakenham.
But I'll be afraid that you might shorten my share.
Not around with it, man. A little bit. We share it all around.
I hear you, my brother. I hear you. Thanks for having me on the program.
Welcome, guys. Most welcome. Just before you came on, I was actually discussing with the viewers the fact that yesterday we saw Bharat Jagdeo, like Rick Van Winkle, suddenly turn up. The local slang suddenly turn up after not seeing him for quite a while. But yesterday, he went on his usual rant and rave, but he is now stating that the coalition is sparking racial disunity in the country. So I took the opportunity to remind the viewers of Bharat Jagdeo's track record. He was even brought before the courts when charges were brought before him and so forth, and the list goes on. So I just shared with them the list of persons who have been terminated that we have been compiling, which now stands at 1,542 persons having been terminated. 96% based on the numbers here, 96% of which happen to be Guyanese of African descent. As well, once you are a Guyanese of East Indian or indigenous descent and happen to be a supporter of the coalition, you too are being victimized. That's where you came in because I was making reference to Ganesh Mahipal, a Guyanese by birth, who have a right to live, work, and earn, who is the husband, a father of a young son. Now, well, the slang we would say, starting life, but because you are a supporter of the coalition, you are now being victimized by the PPP, in which your service or your job is currently threatened. So, just share with us what is exactly transpiring.
Chris, first of all, Guyanese need to understand that the politics of yesteryear is not the politics of today. And Jagdeo has recognized that the APNU AFC has a series of young people in the National Assembly and at the level of the RDC and NDC that are strongly standing up and representing for the ordinary Guyanese. And he, Jagdeo that is, has a number of young people in parliament that seems to not know what is happening in parliament. They seem to not understand the ministry they are holding, and they seem to be making representation just for friends and families and cronies. Everybody is seeing that even though they have a few young faces at the front, there are many advisors and many other different positions that are created in the respective ministries where these old wine bottles are being placed. So that is what Guyanese, first of all, need to understand. The APNU AFC, we have a caliber of young people that are ready to stand up, form, and represent the ordinary Guyanese, who are mostly the ones that are affected by this level of governance the PPP happen to be playing and
Yeah.
putting before our people. And you see it, you see it. Look, the other day we were debating the debt ceiling, the raising of the debt ceiling, where they raised the internal debt ceiling from $150 billion to $500 billion, and they raised the external debt ceiling from 450 billion to 600 billion. And we advanced, our young people on our side, we advanced the argument that with the increase in debt ceiling, you are basically talking about increasing borrowing and increasing the loans that will be placed at the feet of these Guyanese, who by no way or means have been sought, they did not seek approval from the Guyanese, the ordinary Guyanese, if this should be happening. I mean, one would have thought that if you were going to impose a sanction or impose a penalty or impose a burden onto the taxpayers, the least you could have done is to seek their approval to know if they are in agreement that they will have to be burdened with such heavy weight to pay back generations to come. Generations to come will have to pay it back. They did not. We advanced that argument that this government is looking to hang their hats where their hands can't reach. And they're looking to burden the ordinary Guyanese by putting heavy loans on us, which will cause us not to enjoy the current situation we're living in, and the future generation will basically be stymied with heavy burdens of loans. There is no sustainability in the manner in which the PPP is executing their functions. The PPP dismissed us there by saying that that's not true, that's not true. But if you go to Big Smith News Watch, you're going to see that there's an article he wrote where Jagdeo accepted and agreed that majority of budget 2021 will be funded through loans. Now, it would not be funded through a grant, or it would not be funded through the revenue garnered from taxation and the likes. It will be funded through loans. And Guyanese must understand what that means. When you have a loan, you have to pay it back, and you have to pay it back with interest. So you and I, Christopher Jones, our children and our grandchildren, the future generation, the process of burdening them, the process of imposing a burden, the process of imposing a burden onto them will commence in 2021 budget presentation, which is Friday, and that will be the advent of disaster. That will be the advent of a dictatorship. That will be the advent of destruction in Guyana. That will be a dark day. Friday. Friday coming at 2 p.m. when Ashley Singh will stand and read that budget that they have all accepted and agree is going to be funded through a number of loans. It is the advent of destruction for Guyana. It is the beginning of the process of the end of young people. And it's sad. It is extremely sad. But let me come back to what you were asking me about concerning myself.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that
Fact of the matter is, I was slapped with 4 disciplinary charges from the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. One of the charge has to do with them claiming that I was absent from work for 33 days. And the 33 days they cited as May 5th to, I think, June 6th. That is the 33 days, somewhere thereabout, that they have cited that I was absent from work. And then the second charge has to do with me being absent from work again, but they cited this time June 3rd, August 3rd to August 14th. So those are 2 charges that they have laid before me, claiming that I was absent from work and it was without adequate excuse or permission from the Ministry of Public Service. The third charge has to do with me putting my name on the APNU AFC list of candidates, knowing it to be wrong as a public servant. And the fourth charge has to do with me, and this is all they claim, me, Ganesh Paul, divulging information of a secret nature on my Facebook page. Now, the first point I want to make is that all of these charges are frivolous. And to dismiss each one, I'm going to start with the first one, me being absent for 33 days from May 5th to June 6th or June 3rd, somewhere thereabout. That constitutes the 33 days. That period was when COVID-19 was being taken very serious by the government at the time.
It was very prevalent indeed.
APC, when they recognized how serious COVID was, and since they have found patient zero, strict measures were put in place to protect our citizens so that the spread of COVID would not take over our country. And there is a specific gazetted order on COVID-19 measures, which was signed by the then Honorable Valda Ann Lawrence, Minister of Public Health. And this was on the 29th of April. And this order that was signed on the 29th of April, clause 5 of that order lasted until the 14th of July. So that period that they're claiming I was absent from work was captured and protected by the gazetted order. And it says
Yes.
public servants should work remotely from home. They should not be present at work, and they should also take all the necessary precautions at home. So you tell me, don't come to work, and then you want to charge me for not coming to work? These people are ridiculous, highly ridiculous. But it was a malicious charge because I, Ganesh Paul, was present at the National Recount Center. And that is why you see that number 33 is so significant, because it is 33 days that we counted the votes, right? And I did that of my own and in a democratic country as a citizen of this country, and participated in an event of national importance for the future of myself and my child and the future generation. So an activity that encapsulated national importance. So it but that does dismiss that charge. The charge where they say church, that dismissed it. On the 3rd of August to the 14th of August, I presented myself at the regional administration building where I was housed at, and I had an office. Julius Faber, the then regional chairman, took away my keys from the door, locked the office, and told me I have no right being here. And now they're charging me for being absent from work on from the 3rd of August to the 14th of August. And there was still a gazetted order in play. During that period, the gazetted order in play, or the COVID-19 measure, stipulated that you are to work on rotation. Public servants are to work on rotation. My supervisor was Jennifer Ferreira Dougal, the REO at the time. And she knew where I was, she knew what I was doing, and if she had wanted me to be physically present in front of her, I would have made myself available. She knows that. Not once, not once. These charges came about in December of 2020. Not once in March, in April, May, June, July, August. Not once did any superior officer, not once did they ever write me and say, Ganesh, you are in breach of this or you're in breach of that. But in December, in December of 2020, these charges came out of the blues. But we all know that they're politically motivated. We all know that they're trumped up charges. And we all know that they are meant to get at me. And the ceremonial process of having satisfying the standard requests of having a tribunal in place to hear the charges, and they have to write a report and submit it to the Public Service Commission and the likes. The third charge, Chris, the third charge speaks
sorry, go ahead.
to me having my name on the list, on the AP and UASC list. That is protected by the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Article 147 says, save and accept without consent, anybody that wants to be associated with a political party has the right to do so. The Constitution says so. Guyana's Bible says so. And if the document that we are supposed to be using to govern our state says one thing, who are you to question that document? That document is the superior law of this country, and no subsidiary law or no subsidiary legislation or no little rule that you make here or there can override what is written in our Constitution. Then if we are questioning the authenticity of our Constitution, then you are not fit to hold government. So you can't talk about violation of rules and violation of laws when you are charging me for being a part of a political party which my constitutional right allows me to be a part of. But outside of that, let me show you the hypocrisy and let me show you the duplicitous behavior of the PPP. Sheila Versami, who sits in parliament, she was a public servant. When we were in government, she was sitting in parliament as a public servant. You didn't hear no hullabaloo because the AP and UAFC respects the Constitution. Dr. Tandika Smith, who sits in parliament right now, is a public servant. And we are still not making any hullabaloo because we respect and adore the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. We have always been a law-abiding political organization. We have always adored the Constitution, respected it, and we will continue to do that. You have other people from the PPP who were sitting on the list, on the PPP list. Amina Hines was a deputy regional executive officer. She was there. There are many other names that I can mention who were on the People's Progressive Party list, and they were being paid from the public coffers of Guyana, and they were being treated as public servants or as public servants in the public system. So it is astronomically strange, or I shouldn't say that. It's just downright wicked on the PDP's front to believe that I will buckle under what they think they are pressuring me with. But I'm not pressured. I'm
Yeah.
free as a bird. And the last charge that they have before me is divulging information of a secret nature on my Facebook page. The information that was divulged is Dharamlal giving his son contract. Unlimited. Dharamlal instructed this to facilitate this company called Designs Unlimited, but he didn't tell them that it's his son company. But I did research and I found that it is his son's company. It was founded by his son, and his ex-wife is the one of the bosses, so to speak. That is not private information. That is not private information, Christopher Jones. That is information that falls within the confines of the Procurement Act. And Section 10.2 of the Procurement Act requires that once information is requested upon the awarding of contract, and once information is requested on who got the contract, where they live, and how much money they spend, you have to provide that information to any individual that asks for it. So to sum it up all, these are frivolous charges that were instituted by the People's Progressive Party, Digel Dharamlal and Prema Rupnarayan, who's the permanent secretary, to basically kick me out. We had the hearing. We didn't have the hearing. The date for the hearing was set as the 8th of February, and I showed up. I showed up with two beautiful young ladies from the Guyana Public Service Union, and 3 young men were there. And the first thing my GPSU rep asked the young men, can you show us the instrument or the letter, the document that verifies that you have the authority to conduct this hearing? Because this hearing is one that is initiated by the Public Service Commission or the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. They have to do it with an instrument. You know, like anybody, Chris, if you are going on leave and somebody takes over from you, they have to receive a document to say that they hold the authority that you have, to perform your functions, your duties. It is the duty of the Public Service Commission to hold a tribunal, to hold a disciplinary tribunal to hear the charges. The Public Service Commission has the authority to vest that power into the Permanent Secretary. And the Permanent Secretary has that authority to put together the tribunal, a 3-member tribunal or a 1-member tribunal, or choice. But in so doing, they must have an instrument that verifies that they are indeed who they say they are. Or at least the Public Service Commission or the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry should have the courtesy of writing me, who's the accused, writing me, who is the alleged culprit. They should have wrote me indicating that we have set up a tribunal. Mr. Naeem Khan is the chairman. Mr. Puran is not a member, and some other body that was there is a member. And you are required to subject yourself to them. You are required to make yourself present to answer to the charges. You are required to do X, Y, and Z. I have never received any letter of that nature. And when we arrived at the place, and people may ask, Chris, so why did you go, Ganesh? People may want to say, Ganesh, then why did you go if you didn't get no documentation? Chris, I went there in good faith. I went there because I was prepared to defend myself. I know that I'm standing on the side of the law. I know that I'm standing on the side of correctness. So I presented myself. But I presented myself in good faith with the understanding that these 3 gentlemen who are a part of the tribunal will also be reasonable enough to verify with me and my team that they are authentic, they are genuine, and they were mandated to do what they are doing. And when we asked them for the instrument, that they were shocked. None of them did even have a letter. And there are certain specificities in the Constitution that have to be met. For example, for you to sit on that tribunal, you have to be at a grade equivalent to a senior personnel officer or a grade that is higher than me because I'm the accused. You can't have your subordinate trying you, so they have to be higher than me. So I asked them, I said, how many of you here of the three? What grade are you? Which grade do you fall in the Public Service Commission? Because you have a higher grade than me. If you're going to try me, you got to have a higher grade than me. The Constitution says so. None of them could have answered. They didn't even know
Mhm.
who I was. Save and except they were. So it was the three people, the secretary and assuming, pulled the three people randomly from the ministry and said, look, this is the matter, y'all go and listen to what Ganesh going to say. And regardless of what he say, you just write a report and tell me that he should be fired. And you know, that is what I
No, that,
see the ministry was going about doing. They were just
no,
trying
exactly.
to facilitate the ceremonial purpose of having the commission, having
Yeah.
the tribunal, getting the report,
Mm.
and the final decision is to fire Ganesh, and that will be it. But I'm telling you, my brother, they're in for a rough ride. They're in for a
No,
rough ride. And I have a
but
very big
Ganesh,
boat that I am sailing on the ocean with. And I am not disturbed
yeah.
by the rough, turbulent sea that they're presenting to me. I
Mm.
can handle it. Believe me, I can handle it.
It,
And my brother Jones,
it,
I'm enjoying it. Honestly, I am.
No, but Ganesh, essentially is that uh, in the political terms, we would say, because like you and I and our colleagues, members of parliament, is that essentially things like this, we say to the PPP that, listen, you are threatening us in waters in which we can swim. And I saw your
Exactly.
video, Ganesh. You're a very good swimmer. You're a very good swimmer. But Ganesh, we would refer to this tribunal as nothing more than a kangaroo tribunal. Like many other instances where you see the PPP, this is the modus operandi of the People's Progressive Party. So it is nothing new. It is the same PPP as we had obtained in the 23 years. And that is why we make reference to statements such as autocratic, dictatorial tendencies, and you see in the dictatorship of the PPP. Now, people are saying that the PPP, it is a creeping dictatorship. And as far as I'm concerned, like a baby starts to creep, then it starts to walk, then it starts to run. And that is why, as a people, you have to ensure that you nip it in the bud. And that is what we were saying during those elections and those years gone by, is that persons like yourself and I, who have been in the hustings of this country for a number of years, and you experience the belly of the beast, which is the PPP, who known for propaganda, who known for wicked, vindictive behaviors and acts. And what I want right now, Ganesh, to remind our viewers is that you are stationed in Region 3. You have a wife, you have a young son. What the PPP did immediately when they got into office, they transferred you. They transferred you to the Barima Winey region, Region 1. And similarly, people might say, oh, well, I mean, it's just Ganesh, it's just one. But I'll give you another instance. Uh, there is Viceroy Jordan. Viceroy Jordan, 28 years of age, a husband, I think, for probably like 4 years, and he has now a 8-month-old baby son. He resides in Region 5, the Mahaika Berbice region. The PPP, when they got into office, they transfer Viceroy Jordan all the way to Region 10, to the mining town. So here it is, this young man had to leave his wife and his 8-month-old son in Region 5 while he has to go to work in Region 10. And he had to do this so as to provide for his family. And this is the point that we're driving to people, is that when you talk about a PPP or an administration that is so wicked and vindictive, irrespective of your ethnicity, if you are supporting the coalition, they victimize you. In the case of Ganesh Mahipal, if you are a young, upcoming person who stands for what is right and what is just, like Viceroy Jordan, you are transferred. Take, for example, Amanzo Walton Desir, an attorney at law, well qualified, well learned. Amanzo Walton Desir was employed by the People's Progressive Party Civic. She has been working under the PPP's administration for about 8 years before the coalition came into being. Because Amanda Walton Desir expressed her support for the coalition, the People's Progressive Party Civic terminated her service. Terminated her service after 13 or 14 years working in the public service, started under the People's Progressive Party Civic. And that is just to show you the level of wicked and vindictiveness of the PPP. And then here it is, Barrett Jagdeo jumps on television yesterday and rants about race. And I mean, listen, as I said to the man at the Ashmin building, you believe the people of Guyana have forgotten you. We have not forgotten you. And that is why constantly the Guyanese people have to be reminded of what we have currently in office, and what we have to fight against. People say, again, as I said, a creeping dictatorship. Anything that creep is then eventually walk and then run, and you have to nip it in the bud. Persons have been asking Ganesh, and I want to get you on this in terms of what you are doing, why you don't treat an holiday. Small activities have started, and we want to know if the Guyanese people are going to come out to support. You were part of the People's Parliament, which was had last week, Friday, outside of the Stabrook Market Square. And of course, we laid out there to people, because you don't get recourse. Any country, any democracy, any true democracy, as the PPP love to throw out there, any true democracy, they are agencies in which you can seek recourse. And some of those agencies are the Guyana Police Force, the judiciary, the parliament. And all of these institutions, which supposed to provide the Guyanese people with recourse, redress, so forth, all of them have essentially turned a blind eye, shut you down completely, as in the case in terms of what obtained in the parliament. So now you've moved to the People's Parliament in the streets, and you have to take political action. And that is why when that time comes, we hope that all of those persons who are asking the question, what are you doing when you are shutting down and so forth, when you hear the call, that you take the necessary action that is necessary. Ganesh.
Yes, Chris, you are perfectly correct. The statement should not be what y'all doing, is what we doing, because we are as strong as the people who stand with us. And this is a collective calling for us to heed what is there to be heeded. And that is, as you rightfully said, a creeping dictatorship that we should not allow the opportunity to walk. And therefore, we have to deal with this creeping dictatorship as it unfolds. You know, another thing, Chris, that I did not mention, the Prema Rupnarayan, who's the permanent secretary for the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, who is the wife of Romel Rupnarayan, she stopped my salary, so they're not paying me anymore, which is against the labor laws of Guyana. The labor laws say you cannot withhold more than 1/3 of a person's salary, regardless of what the circumstance is. You cannot hold back more than 1/3. She has stopped it completely. Now you are telling me and you are lecturing to this country that you are following the Constitution and you're violating the article that allows me to be a member of a political party. You are violating the labor laws that allows me to enjoy a salary because I'm employed by the Public Service Ministry. And you're violating so many other constitutional clauses of our Constitution. And then you're coming to fool us Guyanese that you believe in the laws. Jagdeo has no moral authority to speak as any officer of this country because he is squatting in office. He is sitting on fraudulent votes. They robbed an entire nation of an election. They rigged the election. 49 ballot boxes had votes in it for the PPP that cannot be verified. Dead people voted. We have the death certificates to show and prove that. Their names were ticked off on the official list of electors. There were missing poll books. There were missing oaths of identity. There are a series of votes that cannot be accounted for. The real riggers are sitting and squatting in office. The real rigger will be coming to Parliament tomorrow to address the Parliament. The real rigger will be standing there speaking to the people. The real rigger is enjoying a democratic country that they are crumbling every single day because they do not respect democracy and they do not respect the democratic norms of a sovereign state like Guyana. So they have no moral authority. They don't enjoy that privilege to speak on behalf of the Guyanese people. The majority of Guyanese people executed their function by going out and voting on March 2nd for a legitimate government, but they did not get that because massive fraud occurred on the east coast of Demerara, the epicenter of fraud that was managed by Anil Nandalal for the PPP. That is what happened. That is the facts. And they cannot change it no matter how much they want to call Mingo and Bingo and Lowenfield and Myers and whoever name they want to call. At the end of the day, Lowenfield had nothing to do with what was put in the boxes. Myers had nothing to do with what was put into the boxes. It is the
That's right.
presiding officers of the various polling stations who are aligned or who were aligned to the People's Progressive Party, and they have been tampered with in terms of the execution of their function from Anil Nandalal. Because we saw a video that was circulating where Anil Nandalal was accused of distributing ID cards and the likes. Why is the PPP not asking the question, where are the documents for those 49 ballot boxes? Nandalal was accused of distributing ID cards and where are the poll books? Where are the oaths of identities? Where are all the statutory documents to substantiate the votes that were found in those boxes? Why are they not asking that question? Why? Because they are trying to change the narrative. They are trying to switch the whole narrative and to create a picture as though these couple Afro-Guyanese are the ones responsible for what transpired. But what really transpired is votes were counted that could not be verified. What really transpired is that a fraudulent administration was installed by Claudette Singh off the backs of hardworking Guyanese and fraudulent votes. That is what is the facts. And that is what people must understand. That is what people must be guided by. The facts must be the facts. Don't go with hearsay. That you can go and talk all day he wants, but it would not change the fact that 49 ballot boxes have thousands of votes that cannot be verified. It will not change the fact that oaths of identities were missing. It cannot change the fact that dead people voted. It cannot change the fact that people who were not in the jurisdiction on March 2nd, their names were ticked off as voted. It does not change those facts. The national recount found those evidence. Those are certified evidence to substantiate that elections March 2nd is not valid, it's not credible, and it cannot be justified as the will of the people. And that is why we are saying fraud is fraud. And that is why we are saying Irfan Ali is an illegitimate president. Irfan Ali is a fraudulent president. Irfan Ali is squatting in office. That is why we are saying that. Because of these evidence. And if you want to dismiss it,
that's right.
If you want to dismiss what we are saying, then the only way to do it is to prove us wrong. Prove us wrong.
That's right. Via the election petition.
Exactly.
Via the, Ganesh, yeah. Via the elections petition. Indeed. All right, so Ganesh, we're out of program time. But I would want to take the opportunity, but I know tomorrow we will be in the National Assembly. I don't know if we're going to be having a lunch break at that 12 o'clock time, but of course we want to do a lunch break then because we want to continue on the discourse. Several things come emanating from not only Region 10, but the COVID-19 cash grant. It still continues to be an issue in terms of the taxpayers' dollars being used by the whims and the whims and fancies of the PPP, because now we see that there has been a distribution in several hinterland communities, but it's not $25,000 per household, but 10 and 15 and 20 $million to some communities. No accountability, no transparency, but those monies are just being doled out. And when the request was came to the Parliament for additional funds, we were not told about that. We were told it is the cash grant to the various household, $25,000. So how is it that people in Georgetown, in South Rumvelt, or South Georgetown areas and many other parts receiving $25,000, many of which have not received, and rather they received the pink slips. You have activists of the People's Progressive Party Civic who are administering the COVID-19 cash grant and essentially turning up at people's houses based on how they know the person's voted, and they say plain and straight that you won't get in nothing. You know, that is what is happening. You have in Region 10, for example, a board of guardians that was established. Now, Region 10 is predominantly Guyanese of African descent, but the entire board of guardians happens to be Guyanese of East Indian descent, operating in a community like Linden. And of course, this board of guardians was appointed by the People's Progressive Party Civic. So, in every facet of the Guyanese society, you see a clear move to control, to have that's some, but absolute control. It is happening to the CDCs, it is happening to the NDCs, it is happening in the RDCs, it is even trying to make its way in the municipalities, it is happening in the parliament, it is happening in the police force, and the list goes on. That is what essentially all Guyanese, local and abroad, and those diplomatic communities operating here in Guyana, the US Embassy, the British High Commission, the Canadian High Commission, the EU, have to take note. And of course, those in CARICOM, because many of which were part of the installation of the PPP. So this is the result of your meddling, if you would want to call it that. You are part and parcel of installing this administration. And now you see that people are referring to it now as a creeping dictatorship. But I say it's a dictatorship because this is what was obtained in the past. Ganesh, closing sentiments. Ganesh? But I say it's a dictatorship. Ganesh? All right, viewers, it appears that we've lost Ganesh Mahipal, but of course you heard his sentiments, and of course we wanted you to hear from the horse's mouth in terms of the victimization that is occurring as it relates to activists of the APNU AFC and Guyanese of African descent. And of course we would want to go into another area tomorrow or the following day as it relates to the dispossessing of lands predominantly from Guyanese of African descent by the People's Progressive Party Civic. Autocratic dictatorship, creeping dictatorship, but I see a full-fledged dictatorship at work. Wicked, vindictive behavior that is occurring across this country in just 6 months. A total of 1,542 persons have since been terminated from their places of employment, 96% of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent. Of course, I remind you that all of these persons who have been terminated, they have families. They have families to maintain. And like you, who are watching this program, and you may likely be a supporter of the People's Progressive Party Civic, and that is fine. You have that democratic right to choose any political party of your choice. You have that right. But when it comes to people being terminated from their places of employment, these are people who are working. These are not people who are begging. These are not people who are stealing. These are people, these are Guyanese by birth, who get up every single day and go out there and work. And they work to earn an honest dollar. An honest dollar. They're not thieving. They work to get an honest dollar. And they use those monies to either pay their rent, to pay their mortgage, to pay their school fees for their children, to pay the payments that they have on any vehicle, to pay courts, to pay lucky dollars, to purchase food for their house, to pay their utility bills, the GPL, to pay their GT&T, just like you. Just like you. And as I said before, irrespective of which political party you support, every Guyanese, irrespective of his or her ethnicity, or irrespective of the political party that they support, have a right. It is a God-given right or a human right It is enshrined in the Constitution of Guyana, which is a living document. They have a right to work and earn. And when you have an administration that is going to terminate, as it stands now, 1,542 people, 96% of which happens to be Guyanese of African descent, just because of how they look, or just because of how they perceive to vote in the last election. It is an alarm bell period. Everyone should be alarmed. And as I said before, people are referring to the PPP as a creeping dictatorship. I say anything that creeps will eventually walk, and you have to nip it in the bud. As we said before, people often say, man, you, particularly those, the diplomatic community will say, have you seek all of these recourse? Have you exhausted every avenue of which you can make the point out? We've been on these programs, for example, every single day, 3 times a day. And you have different persons who would lend their voices to these to this conversation, whether it's Mark Benchcop, whether it's Rickford Burke, whether it's Burke Senior, every single day for the past 6 months. And we've been highlighting instance after instance in which discrimination and persons being terminated because of their ethnicity, persons' lands are being dispossessed because they happen to be Guyanese of African descent. We brought all of this information to you. We seek recourse to the courts. We seek recourse to the police. We seek to have the matter raised at the highest decision-making forum of this land, which is the Parliament of Guyana, and many of which are being shut down. So what is left for you to do? Sit back, fold your hands, and accept? Or bust your Bible, your Bhagwan Gita, or the Quran and pray? You decide. We will continue to bring you the facts and the information. We invite you to join my colleague Randolph Critchlow at 5 o'clock this afternoon, where he will continue the discourse, and he has some new information that he would want to bring to you. And at 8 o'clock this evening, Sherrod Duncan will be in the ring, and he has some breaking news to bring to you. So you don't want to miss those 2 programs, 5 o'clock this afternoon with Randolph Critchlow and 8 o'clock tonight with Sherrod Duncan. My name is Christopher Jones. On behalf of my colleague, Ganesh Mahipal, I'd like to thank you very much for being part of Lunch Break. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.